Good afternoon, friends. I, Rakhi Sharma, Program Coordinator, ACPDM, welcome you all in this interactive teleconferencing program of Advanced Certificate in Power Distribution Management. Friends, we have already discussed about the energy audit and energy accounting. In this session, we are going to discuss about the disaster management in power distribution. It's our privilege to have Mr. Saurabh Srivastava from North Delhi Power Limited. Now, we welcome you in this teleconferencing session, Mr. Saurabh.
Thanks.
Friends, this is the interactive session. We request to ask any question during the presentation. Our toll-free number is 1800-12345. So you can contact at any time and you can call us. Now I request Mr. Saurabh to take up this session.
Thanks, Rakhi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Saurabh Srivastava and I'm working in North Delhi Power Limited, and I'm responsible for the disaster management and environment activity for the company. It's my privilege to come across to you and tell something about the disaster management in power distribution, as power distribution is such a large place and infrastructure of the public, where any disaster is like a disaster to them. Like, disaster is the word which cannot be defined anywhere, because the magnitude always changes. So what is disaster then? As per the dictionary and all, we can say it is a distress nature which is a sudden or a great misfortune, and it is a calamity. But this is not all. How to go forward with it? An event which affects a community, the consequence of which are beyond the immediate financial, material or emotional resources of the community itself. So this is the, in nutshell, definition of the disaster. So from where this word disaster has come across? This is a combination of two Latin words which means bad and star. So it's a bad star which brings the disaster. It was thought to be in old Italian nation. Some facts of the disaster. These disasters are always of the natural or man-made. So the responsibility lies here with only with the nature or with the man-made. Disaster itself is not a cause, it is just an event, but event that damaging consequence to the property or the people. There is nothing constant in the nature, and the nature itself changes regularly. It's a slow changes going on in nature, which is most unpredictable thing, like a volcano. Nobody knows where the volcano can erupt, and even the floods. Nowadays, floods, some tsunami, like some Katrina, some sort of terrestrial rains, which are really unpredictable, and they come across suddenly, and they totally disrupts the human life. So there is a nature hazard. The natural hazard that can cause disaster consequences includes earthquake, coastal erosions, flood, landslide, lightning, tornado, tropical cyclones, volcano, and some form of the environmental degradation also. Some part of environmental degradations like deforestation, as human beings are growing, they want more space to stay and live on this earth, so they are cutting the old forests they are bringing some unnatural changes in the environment, and that are resulting in the deforestation and desertification of the area. Like man is drawing more of the water from the earth, so the desertification is happening, which is resulting in a pollution. So somehow it's everything is linked together, like increase of the population means deforestation, then desertification and pollution, which is again coming back as a form of a disaster to the man. We have three categories of disaster. One is neither anticipated nor expected. Other is anticipated but not expected. And the last and most deadliest is anticipated and also expected. I'll discuss here with some of the world's great disasters Because why I am using this word great? Because if you put them in a sequence or in a line, the worst comes first. Like Chernobyl disaster was one of the major accident in a nuclear plant. It was happened in April 26, 1986. Where there, of course, there was people died was less, but the people affected was more. And as it was a nuclear disaster, so we keep it as one of the top in man-made disasters. Almost 3,36,000 people were affected of their radiations. Then comes to the natural earthquake disasters. Like in 1935 in Pakistan, we have an earthquake which killed more than 30 to 60,000 of the people. In 1948, in Turkmenistan, the magnitude of 7.3 destroyed almost 1,10,000 people. In 2001 January, in El Salvador, a magnitude of 7.7 Richter scale almost killed 850 people, and nearly 1 lakh of the people died, has lost their houses. Same type and same magnitude of the earthquake in India, in Bhuj, on June 26th, killed more than 20,000 of people and leaving more than 6 lakh people homeless. So here, with the same magnitude, same everything, it's the value of the place and the location. So here, which I was discussing earlier, it's not the quantity and the quality of the things which has happened, it's a resultant, what type of the resultant is there in that matters a lot. Some disasters, top 10 worst natural disaster I'll discuss here, and you will find it very peculiar that flood, in top 10 disasters, flood comes almost at 5 locations, and all happened in China, killing maximum of almost 10 lakh people, and sometime even more than that. Next comes earthquake, like in China, Jan 23, 1556, a very old record we have found. It's almost 8,30,000 of the people died during that. Whereas in the earthquake, again in China, in July 28, 1976, there 2,42,000 people died. Official government figures was somewhere more, but this was the figure which was there. Apart this, we have typical cyclones which attacked at the east of the Pakistan in 1970, killing more than 5 lakh to 10 lakh people. Same in Vietnam, 1881, 3 lakh. Here I'll ask a question to you. There is any peculiar thing you found in this data? Yes, you would have find something. Like everything is coming only in the Asia. You feel, just go to the data, China, Pakistan, China. So you'll feel that our Southeast Asia is prone for the disasters. Like in earthquakes, that was the top 10 worst disasters. Here I'll concentrate on earthquake. In China, it was magnitude of more than 8. In January 15, that I told you earlier, it was 8,30,000 people. And almost in this again China, Syria, China. So our this part of the world, that is Southeast Asia, is somewhat very prone to this disasters, like earthquake also. We have the cyclones, where that toll was of course higher. In them, 2 are in India, Bombay, on June 6, 1882, where almost 1 lakh people lost their life, and in Calcutta, in India, in 1864, again 70,000 people. So all this data shows that floods are most deadly types of the natural disaster, with all 5 of the deadliest flood appearing in the top 10 disaster of all time, and those all are occurring in Asia. So all of the top 10 disasters occurred in Asia. All of the top 5 floods occurred in China, and all of the top 5 tornadoes occurred in the Asia, and all of the worst tropical cyclones occurred in the Southeast Asia. This is the gist of all this. This does not mean that these type of disasters cannot occur anywhere else, just that the most deadly ones seems to occur in some places over and over. This is the repeated history is found. So what is the vulnerability? I told you, like in El Salvador, there was a magnitude 7.7 Richter scale of, and again the same Richter scale in the Bhuj. There we lost more number of the lives. So here is the vulnerability. Is therefore vulnerability which is more important than hazard that is caused by a disaster. If something happens in a desert, So that will not toll more number of their lives. Whereas if something happens in a big cities like Delhi, Calcutta, Bombay and all, so there the people and the property and other losses will be more. So you have to take a proper combination of these two factors then to define what is the vulnerability. Impact of the disaster. Each type of disaster can have number of effects. It could be a health, social, economical, political, environmental, administrative or managerial. And when disaster comes, it is a combination of all these things. Disaster can have number of combination of the effects. Many disasters can be scaled on the set of the ratings like loss of human life, injury, damage of the property, loss of life of animals also, loss of agriculture, consequences, long-term effects, loss of productivity, inconvenience to the society and law order distribution. So when you will plot this graph against the disasters in your area, you will find that many will be in agreement and some will not be in agreement. So there you can easily trace the vulnerability. So again for the man-made also you have to plot this activity, and you will find that most of this is true. In nuclear explosions, of course, this is for the maximum. What efforts we require during the disaster? It is not possible to do away with the devastation due to natural hazard completely, nor the man-made disaster can be simply eradicated. It must also be recognized that Indian subcontinent in particular has been prone to disaster from time immemorial, and the vulnerability has enhanced in recent years. After the earthquake in Gujarat, in India, the government of India constituted a body, a high commission body, with the naming National Committee on Disaster Management, whose the chairmanship of the Prime Minister of India, and his mandate included suggestion of the suitable legislation, institutional measures to deal with the calamity in the future. It is a high power committee which comes and takes the charge if there is any disaster in the country, in the area or in the country. Institutional setup is there to manage the resources, management and other government bodies during the disaster. What is a disaster preparedness system? We have preparation, we should have a response, recovery and mitigation. Where we are always at the in between the preparation and the response stage. You will find the disaster will strike after preparation, and you have to respond in the situation, and during the response your all activity will be stabilized, your disaster management is situation will stabilize. Then you will come across with the recovery phase. Recovery is from the effect which has caused by the disaster, and this recovery will lead to your some learnings, your some corrective and preventive actions for the future. So that will be your mitigation and learning. Need of disaster and crisis management plan in power sector. As you all know, power sector is one of the important infrastructure which may get affected due to any crisis or disaster leading to disruption in the generation, transmission and distribution of electricity. It therefore becomes extremely important to evolve crisis disaster management plan to restore the generation, transmission and distribution of power in the affected area in the shortest possible time. Why we need to be more active in this power distribution? Because people need power. Not only people, but also the government agency needs power at the recovery phase. Because you have lot of equipments which are power driven and they require power. Before going in the detail, I'll show you some glimpse of the power disaster in power sector. This is some of the photographs from the tsunami affected area, where you can see maximum number of the poles and has damaged. Some of the pole mounting substations has been has been changed to next to the impossible. It cannot be repaired. People are maintaining those, people are changing the things. So the proven value for the crisis readiness. If we are ready for any crisis or the disaster, I suppose, not only I, with that the findings say that if you have the readiness plan, your damage will be less. If you have a management plan, and you plot the graph between time and the loss and the productivity, you will find that with the crisis readiness, your impact will be less and your lost time will be also less. So your impact and the lost time will be saved, whereas in case you don't have the readiness or you don't have the emergency plan in hand, your impact will take its toll to the highest maximum, and again with the gradually it will come down. So this is your loss. Here, for any business planning, like power distribution or the power management is a business, I'll say, because nowadays some power distribution is now in a private sector, or they are going to be in a private sector. So these all needs a funds, and they all need a business plan. So to make a business successful, it should not be affected by any disaster and all. You should make some solid foundation to mitigate the risk. Of course, if you want a quicker recovery time for your business to come up, you will need some certain more investment, that's higher in the cost. But if you will put some less cost, your total time will be more and your effect will be more. So your network of the system, your power, your environmental control and equipment should be one of the robust thing in the nature which can build a solid foundation to mitigate the risk. Whereas in case of the second comes data, third comes your application, and last is your site, which requires your effort and the money. Here I will graduate from disaster management to the business continuity planning. Of course, this is out of your course, but I just wanted to put it in your system because this is the most important thing which is coming up in any business. Like, you have to plan for your business continuity. This is your power distribution or power generation is one of the your company's product, and you have to manage that these all systems are working during any disaster or emergency, so that your business can run in a normal condition, even in a adverse condition. The natural and man-made emergencies, resources and IT equipment, material in bulk and power, human capital, adequate skill, as well as the capital, working capital, revenue, liability, these all are the direct effect on the emergency or the business continuity planning. Whereas some other things like your expectation of the government or shareholders, business environment, technology and other things are indirectly affecting on your emergency or disaster management. How to make your disaster management plan and what should be their business planning life cycle. You have to analyze the situation, you have to provide a solution. You have to analyze means you have to do some risk assessment, that if something goes wrong, what will happen, what will be the consequences. You have to design your solution regarding that. According to that, you have to put it in implementation. You have to plan for it. You have to put it under the testing and acceptance phase, that we call as a mock drill, and then you maintain it. So this is the whole life cycle of the business continuity or disaster management plan. And if you will make your plan according to this cycle, certainly your plan will work in any adverse condition. And type of disasters may affect power distribution. Of course, this can vary area to area, but basically I'll say, if I'm talking about Indian scenario or some of the part of the India where you don't have a coastal area like Delhi and all, plain area, you will have following set of the power, you will have disasters which may affect the power distribution. Natural type of the disasters will be earthquake, flood, storms, cyclone and drought. Whereas man-made will be fire, major equipment failure, bomb threat or explosion, terrorist attacks or threats, even your strike and a major absenteeism will be one of the most important man-made disasters. So how to categorize the emergency levels or the emergencies disasters in your area? You have to plan as per level 1, level 2 and level 3. Level 1 is a minor incident which is very much local and impact is in a very localized places. Whereas the emergency is the for your company will be level 2, where event that disrupts one or more operations of your whole company or the organization. Whereas the disaster will be event in which more or less all activity got disrupted for some period of the time. In this operation activity will be in level 1, that is a minor incident, will be minimal or localized. Most of the activities will not be affected, whereas the significant localized activity are shut down, will be shut down. Whereas in the case of disaster, your significant all activities will be shut down. Of course, your contractual manpower and working staff will be affected. Your media coverage will be very less in level 1, that is a minor incident. Of course, media will take certain news in a local and regional angle in a level 2, whereas if it is a disaster, there will be a lot of coverage on that. Why I am talking about the media coverage? In next of my slides you will find that why media coverage is very important in case of the disaster management. Your public and government concern will be limited in level 1, that is a minor incident, whereas in case of the level 2, that is your emergency, will be a slight potential will be there, whereas in case of level 3, that is a disaster, potential exists for an embarrassment situation and government investigation or hearing can be taken place. EMT, that is the emergency management team, will be involved. In level 1, probably none of your local staff or the area management can bring you out from that problem. Whereas in level 2, that is the emergency, of course you will require some attention, and in level 3, of course your emergency management team will be involved in a lot to take all necessary actions to overcome from that. Whereas in case of the EOT, that is the emergency operation team, it's the same, limited or none. Whereas in case of the level 2, that is the emergency, you will be conditional requirement of the emergency operation team, whereas in disaster, your emergency operation team will be working round the clock on emergency service level to come out from that that disaster. How your emergency management team will look like? That is a centralized disaster management team will have certainly a chairman. It could be your CEO or head of the company. The deputy chairman will certainly be the next in charge of the Mr. CEO, and the chief incident controller will be the head of operation. Why we keep head of operation as the chief incident controller? Because head operation has the larger scope of infrastructure in his hand. He has to manage all the activities in operations. Your safety officer or the disaster management head will be helping the chief incident controller and the organization during that. Your executive management team, that is the EMT I told you earlier, will be constituted of all functional heads. All functional head means your functional heads of operation, your functional head of distribution, your functional head of procurement, your project services, your IT, your revenue management, your procurement, your stores. Everybody will be involved in this, because this is the setup which will be sitting at when there is a call of emergency by chief incident controller. All these executive management team members will assemble at one designated emergency control center, which is one of the safe location in your company, and they will be working across the table and to mitigate all the risk which has happened there. And under each executive management team, they will have whole department working under them, that we call as emergency operation team. Same on the site, this was earlier was on the management level, whereas this is on the site level. At every site you will have one site incident controller, which will have a team of your, it could, if it is a distribution company, of course your zonal managers or zonal heads. If it is in grids, then grid in charges or site in charges. You can name as per your company's terminology, and they'll be having their own team under them. It could be zonal JRDMOs, your zonal shift officers, your MMC, your hub maintenance crew, your specialized maintenance crew, your specialized line maintenance crew could be your team of this. Like site incident controller will be heading that site. It will be giving direction to these all person who are under them, and they will be working with their team on the site to manage the activity. If we can put it in a form of a flow sheet for operations, we will say that if there is something happened in on one site, the site in charge or anybody who is the heading that area will assess the damage and estimated system and network downtime. Does disaster criteria apply? The person has to take a call. If no, then the person will take immediate local action. Situation will be controlled. If yes, then stabilize the situation and return to the normal. If it does not, then the person has to think whether my disaster criteria, because for every small emergencies are the activities, we cannot call for the disaster, because the time you call the disaster in a company, there are some super powers which comes to everybody, and you have to take some principles under them, and you have to come out of that disaster. So before you have to call for disaster, the chief head of operation of your company has to be taken in consent. Your operation has to be ready to take that as a call as an emergency in your company, so that everybody can sit together and work towards getting out from that disaster. So if disaster criteria apply, invoke the disaster management plan and emergency management team in your company, inform the chief incident controller, activate your command center and conduct the meeting of the emergency management team. Receive the damage assessment from the person who are on the site. At the same time, you have to take some activity at this stage, which will be, one is a network activity and one will be some administrative activities. Like in network activity, you have to start your disaster management of your network, and you have to take all the corrective steps to come out from that problem. You will find if is all tasks completed. If it is yes, and you will find whether disaster the situation of the disaster is under control, then you have to wait for the person who are even on the other side of the network, like your administrative staff. Apart that, behind the curtain, your power management team will be working to arrange a backup or second source of supply from generator or from the other power supply companies. Your transportation team will be arranging the transport and other related equipments like cranes, trucks, transport vehicles, etc. on the site as per the requirement. The security team will be maintaining the law and order, security and traffic management, disaster management and rescue activities on the site, including the rescue and the search activity also. Your supply and store team. Why I am telling you this? Because these all are the important teams in your company. The time you will make your disaster management, you have to make such teams in your company. Supply and store team. Arrange for a material to be delivered on site by for required team. Medical team will be assisting in a medical help to the person who are affected. Your finance team will be helping the other staffs for arranging the finance during that period. Your corporate communication team will be your mouth for the media. That I was telling why media coverage is very important. Like everybody cannot speak to this communication or outside world on the media. So your corporate communication, who is in direct contact with our boss or the CEO of the company or the chief operation officer of the company, will give its words to the media. So everybody should not speak in front of the media. That gives the bad image of the company and some wrong messages also. The project team will be giving the project recovering from the that team will be helping in the making new towers, your new buildings or infrastructure for putting up the power lines and all. Your legal and insurance team will be helping in arranging the information, and insurance team to visit the site for all legal and statutory compliance while recovery. Your government liaison team will be helping or liaising with all police, fire, medical, government bodies and ministry as well for getting the required medical or government approvals. So if all these tasks are completed and situation is under control, this goes back to this place. There's the termination of emergency, because the same time when you are closing the emergency of the operation, you have to close the emergency of the administration staff also, and the termination of emergency comes, and recovery and loss assessments has to be done before you have to call off. Then operation comes to the normal service level, and you take some learning and the preventive actions from that. So this will result in a happy ending. This is the format of the site plan which you have to make for your disaster management plan. This disaster plan will be based on all your 10 disaster I told you earlier. This is man-made and the natural disasters. This is a very detailed format which I will take certainly some time for you to.
Saurabh, how can we categorize that these problems come under disaster? Some small problems are there. How can we say that this problem only will be disaster and this is the small problem like this? Is there any how can we categorize them?
Like I told you earlier, this is the vulnerability you have to take, because there is nothing called a yardstick. In power distribution business, there is nothing called a yardstick which will say after this disaster criteria applies. So you have to take your all study that I told you. You have to do some risk assessments. You have to do that if something goes wrong, like in case if I tell you with one of an example, like a flood is one of the major problems nowadays. So floods are coming in your city, and certainly it has taken in some of your sub distribution network, yes, like 33 or 66 kV substation. If only few of the grid substations are underwater, like 2 or 3 grid substations are under this flood, we will not call it as a disaster. We will say it is a minor incident.
Okay.
Then if it's almost your half of the city or your half of the operation is area under the flood, and you feel that your operation activities are going to stop, then there will be an emergency. So you have to take some preventive steps, like this substation has to be dewatered from that area. And even after the emergency, you have to call everything. Like the things is started, you have to take it as this is a minor incident. You have to take it gradually. You have to improve to the emergency. And if you feel that emergency is also not being managed, then you have to call for the disaster. So nature gives you a lot of time to declare the disaster.
Okay.
Only except in the case of the earthquake, which does not gives you any time, whereas another.
What about the equipment failure, etc.?
Major equipment failures, like if I say major equipment failures, that is your transformers and other, same criteria applies even for your this, because if your one substation has gone blackout, no issues, it's a normal thing.
Okay.
Whereas if set of 5 or 6 substation or grids are under this major equipment due to some cascading effect, then this is a emergency for your company. And if your whole setup, your whole disaster, if it's a whole activity is stopped, like in power generation, whole generation is stopped, it's not scheduled stoppage, then this is a disaster for your company, because people needs power. They have to work. They have to go with their life, and you as a company you have to provide the power to them. So you have to categorize. Here again, your assessment will take your equipment as well your financial loss also. Financial loss is very important. Like I told you earlier in your business continuity plan, that I took this time as not as a disaster, because disaster is a one step below than your business continuity plan. In your whole total emergency plan for your company, you have to take disaster management and business continuity as one of the one umbrella, and disaster will be a part in that. So by disaster, you will be making that your whole system is such a robust, such a strong, that your things are not creating any problem to them. So for that you have to make one proper format, and you have to define everybody's role in that. One is site incident controller. You have to make somebody head of the organization, or the head of that location has to be a site incident controller, which will be taking charge at the time of any disaster. Before that, you have to tell that what will be the effect of such type of the disaster. You have to, in 2 or 3 lines, you have to define what is the type of the disaster you are coming from. Then state, you have to say you should have some safety coordinators in under your team. You should have some security coordinator, will coordinate with the security department and the safety department. You should have some logistic coordinators. This will be a team of some people to coordinate with the general administration for the vehicles and all. Should have a medical coordinator team to coordinate with the medical department. So they will call the medical department that something has gone wrong in my area, please send your medical team. Or you have to do some tie-up with the local hospitals where during any disaster the person can be moving to the entry team for the rescue and backup. Of course, this entry team here is not only for the natural, like earthquake and all in a fire, that person has to enter, but even in your major equipment failure also, you have to define which group of people will move first to assess the damage, or for the rescue of that equipment. Because if you have a set of 15 people as in your department, and suddenly something went wrong and something happened, even your major equipment failure also, the whole, everybody will not rush to that site. So
who will decide this?
This is the you have in your company, you should have one person responsible for the disaster management. You should have one team dedicated for that, and that should make a plan. And this team and again the department, like your operation department, should make this set of the people list with them. You should keep ready and what do you say, displayed at many of the locations, so people are aware that at such a disaster, I am in this safety team, I am in a logistic team, I am in a medical team, I am in the entry team. I have to rush toward that. I am aware about my duties at the disaster. Like this will have this team will have name, the primary responsibility holder. You will have his contact number, even his contact number of his residence also. If something happened in a very off hours also, so the person can be contacted. If that person is not in the city, of course this question will come. If the person is not in the city or is not in the state, then how to work? So you should have, for every responsibility, you should have a set of second responsibility holder also with the same contact number. Like if the Mr. X is not there, Mr. Y can be contacted in this side. So your proper disaster management is met. After that, you should have one backup team even for your entry team also. Like if your entry team needs some support, manpower support, your backup team can provide that. Then you should have one damage assessment team. A team of this is a team of a technical person who assess the damage at the equipment what has been lost and the asset has been lost. Then is your restoration team. Restoration team is the person who is giving all technical supports and putting the equipment or the area or the asset back to the service level. Then you have to make that which all emergencies will come under level 1, level 2 and level 3, that is the emergency, minor incidences, emergency and disaster. What is your preparedness for that? And action to be taken in case of every disaster. The responsibility of that person who has to do it. Then modus of recovery. Of course, this is a very elaborate thing I am telling you in a nutshell, but this is the modus of recovery is the most important thing. If something has wrong, like for your earthquake, this whole sheet will be different, whereas in case of your flood, it will be different. Even for your this what do you say, this Major equipment failure will be different, because every set of disaster will have a different activity, and no two disaster can be similar in a nature. Of course, you can keep this name of the list similar, but you cannot keep this activities similar for each and every disaster. So you have to make different set of the disasters for this thing. Then you require some resources for emergency and disaster. You have to clearly mark the items, quantity, budget, source, and the contact number of the contractors from where you will get it. If you have to subcontract it, from where you have to get these all things. Same, the contact number. And if you have some interdependency within your company, you have to define it. Otherwise, if it is an interdependency between some of any other power distribution agency, you have to give the name of that. So why we require this sort of the format? So you'll say, because this formats will remain as a format. People can say it, but this will give you certainly some feedback, some information or knowledge management during any emergency. Like your person who are in their emergency management team will be sitting in an emergency control center, and that time this persons can just turn around these pages, and they can check the person who are those who have a primary responsibility or secondary responsibility, and they can be contacted at those hours, and such activities for the activities can be taken across, so that your disaster management can be met. So be ready, disaster is on the way. So we have to all practice the disaster management as holistically as possible, because we never know that when disaster can strike us back in this country. This is Rakhi, I suppose, is over for them for the today, and lot of things are still remaining, because disaster in power sector is the infrastructure which is required most, and everybody comes after this power distribution companies or the power generation boss. You have to provide the power, no matter what you are going through. That I have seen personally in this team, in this company, that people call you up even in a wee hours, and they say that no matter how your persons are working, where they are, how hit they are affected with that disaster, no matter, but we need power. It's their right also to need the power, but we have to come and we have to put our socks, pulled our socks, so that we can provide the power at any cost in any weak conditions.
So friends, this was a very interesting and informative session by Mr. Saurabh. Thank you, Saurabh.
Thanks, sir.
And we express a sincere thanks to all the viewers and the learners of this program. Thank you, friends, and we wish you all the very best. There is an announcement. The next teleconferencing session is on 13th of April, the coming Sunday. We will discuss some energy management topic and some management topics. Thank you.